Warning: everything you see in this video is a computer-generated graphic, not reality. Everything that happens here is fiction. The armed forces of Ukraine saw enemy Russian vehicles on the battlefield trying to break through the defense and storm Ukrainian positions. But the enemy delivered a precise strike, stopping the offensive. In this fragment, a kamikaze drone finishes off a Russian tank. When the Russian military realized that they were forced to flee, Ukrainian drones began to ruthlessly pursue them. And here is a kamikaze drone aiming a bomb directly at the turret of a Russian tank. Another target for a Ukrainian drone and another hit. The Russian occupiers suffered the greatest losses during the storming of Avdiivka and Bakhmut. Ukrainian military destroyed Russian equipment accurately and quickly. The armed forces of Ukraine have identified two targets that urgently need to be destroyed, two units of UR-77, which pose a huge danger to the lives of military personnel. Having calculated the coordinates, one missile was launched from the HIMARS, which destroyed two targets simultaneously. At this point, the Pantsir S-1 was spotted 30 kilometers south of Donetsk. The Ukrainian military first fired one missile at the self-propelled anti-aircraft missile and gun system, which knocked the Pantsir S-1 out of action and finished it off with another shot. When attacking Chasiv Yar, it is very difficult for the Russians to use Avdiivka and Avdiivka as cover. Just take a look at what happened to the Russians when they were spotted on the edge of the village. There are at least 20 of them, and only one Ukrainian drone is necessary to handle all of them. And if the occupiers are at a disadvantage, this is what happens to them. At first, the soldiers try to shoot down the Ukrainian armed forces where connotates from. But in a moment, a tank with infantrymen arrives and clears the enemy positions. Ukrainian troops were also actively destroying Russian convoys in the Melitopol and Berdyansk sectors. The security service of Ukraine will continue to dispose of enemy convoys. The Russian army advanced along the cordon and had their first success. This was seen by them as a weakness in Ukrainian defenses. And from the beginning, what was considered a reconnaissance battle gradually turned into full-fledged combat operations. The glorious work of the armed forces of Ukraine proves how difficult and tactical war is. In this video, you can see the work of the Ukrainian military, who found a Russian self-propelled artillery system and destroyed it with two drones. Precise targeted fire, no misses. Accurate and precise fire of the famously trained soldiers without a single miss demonstrates high skill and coordination, which once again proves their ability to successfully destroy enemy equipment. The invaders began to bring in equipment to attack the town of Vovchansk. This is one of the first tanks to be destroyed by an ATGM. These APCs were stopped by Ukrainian kamikaze drones. New turtle tanks are also here. But that's not a problem for the Ukrainian defenders. Here, the drone pilot spotted a parking lot of Russian armored vehicles. A few kamikaze drones have left them nothing but ashes. This is where the pilot of the Ukrainian Armed Forces kamikaze drone unit Shadow spotted an enemy truck with ammunition. Having quickly worked out the target's coordinates, the drone was immediately launched and delivered a preemptive strike on the vehicle, disabling it. At the edge of the village, Russian soldiers took up positions in abandoned buildings. They were spotted, and an American Abrams tank advanced towards them. The tank approached to a distance of about 100 meters and delivered several precise hits on the enemy's location. The target was destroyed, and the Abrams tank returned to the rear. Note that the tank is protected by an anti-drone metal mesh. This tactic is used by the 47th Brigade of the Ukrainian forces. An Abrams tank suddenly appears, delivers a powerful strike against the Russians who have entrenched themselves in a position, and then retreats. The goal is to dislodge the enemy and prevent them from establishing a stronghold. These two stranded Russian tanks were preparing to head for the Ukrainian borders. But the AFU spotted them in time. The first artillery shells flew past, but it scared everyone who was there, and the tanks were left unprotected, which allowed the drone pilots to burn them to the ground without any problems. The invaders are still short on equipment in this region, and the infantry is heavily suffering because of it. Here, the group was attacked by a mortar. Here, they were destroyed by a Ukrainian ATGM. And in these moments, the drone pilot dropped a grenade right on the heads of the OR. These tanks shelled the positions of the AFU near Vovchansk. The UAV pilots followed them to their stopping point and destroyed them with attack drones at the first opportunity. Here's what's left of one of them. Donetsk region. A drone operator spotted a huge convoy of vehicles. More than 40 vehicles headed for an assault against the Ukrainian military, and several more drones in the air. The operator identified the coordinates and launched several fuses from the HIMARS. As a result, the entire enemy convoy was destroyed. The rest of the equipment was finished off by drones. A Russian tank brigade tried to break through Ukrainian drones, but their attempt failed. Ukrainian soldiers did their job perfectly. To capture this devastated Ukrainian city, the Russians concentrated all their main forces here. The first wave of armored vehicles came under intense and highly accurate fire from Ukrainian artillery. The Ukrainians are using not only regular high-explosive shells, but also precision-guided munitions like Excalibur and others. At times, they are able to hit Russian tanks even while they are moving. Intense artillery fire can cause panic among enemy troops and disrupt their formations. But look at these insane Russian tanks. It seems like they fear nothing and continue to bravely attack, pushing forward to break through to the city. This tank was stopped by a single precise hit, but another one, even more cunning, is following right behind it. This tank got close to the Ukrainian positions but was hit by an anti-tank grenade, and then hit again. Despite this, the tank survived but turned around and began to retreat. It was then struck by a Ukrainian FPV drone, which finally disabled it. Now, Vovchansk is being hit with bombs like this. But the real threat of a land assault on Chasiv Yar arose after the fall of Bakhmut in May 2023. The tactics of the Russians are very similar to the ones they used in Avdiivka and Bakhmut. The Russian army is using a large number of aerial bombs and plans to attack the city from the north and south, with the main goal of cutting the supply line. This semi-envelopment is supposed to be completed with a frontal attack on Chasiv Yar. The attacks on Ivanivska and Bodanivka began almost at the same time. Let's see how it went. Through the drone camera, we see 4 APCs moving towards the village. Ukrainian artillery starts firing. Some of the vehicles manage to break through to the forest belt. Failure catches up with the first of them. The APC explodes on a mine. Notice how many shells are coming from the defense. But so far, no precise hits. The camera is pulling back to get information about all the attacker. During the rotation of the Russian military, a Ukrainian kamikaze drone spotted a successful target, and in a few minutes the enemy and enemy equipment were destroyed. Ukrainian kamikaze drone pilots are trained to see a target and destroy it at the same time. And here, between the trees, is a BM-21 Grad, which is the equipment used by the Russian military to launch rockets at peaceful cities in Ukraine. The drone saw the target and immediately recognized it. At this moment, a Russian soldier is trying to escape from a kamikaze drone, but the drone was faster and destroyed the target. The rest of the armored vehicles were also destroyed by FPV drones, and the Russian offensive failed this time. Then, a little more time needs to be spent destroying the abandoned Russian tanks. But the Russians wouldn't be Russians if they didn't send another column of tanks and APCs into the attack. This column turned out to be even larger than the previous one. The Ukrainians used combined fire from artillery and FPV drones against them. Most of the armored vehicles were destroyed en route, but this tank managed to break through the farthest. Oops, but luck wasn't on its side either. It hit a mine and was finished off by a drone. And here comes another Russian kamikaze. This tank decided to break through the Ukrainian defenses on its own, but it too forgot that the closer it gets to Ukrainian positions, the more mines lie in its path. But we all know that the Russians never learn from their mistakes. They just follow their commander's orders, no matter how foolish those orders may be. The Ukrainians have no use for this junk. This old Russian T-62 tank is destroyed with just a grenade. It's not even worth using a cheap FPV drone on it. Complete junk and scrap. Then the Russians send another column of tanks, hoping to finally break through the Ukrainian defenses at this point. This column looks even stronger than the previous one. But the Ukrainians are ready to unleash a real storm of FPV drones on the Russians. Dozens of drones armed with various types of munitions are deployed on the mission. The lead Russian tank with a mine clearance device becomes the first target and is immediately destroyed by a single hit. And finally, the destruction of a Russian tank by 2 kamikaze drones. Support the Ukrainian military. Glory to the Ukrainian warriors.